The moment began without warning, slipping into Clare Bennett's evening like a quiet crack in glass. Easy to miss, but impossible to forget. It happened while she stood beside her husband Mark in a softly lit community hall just outside Seattle. Neighbors had gathered for a local fundraiser filled with gentle music, polite smiles, and small talk that floated through the room like harmless noise. At first, everything felt normal. Clare had worn the blue dress Mark once said he loved. She felt calm, present, settled into the comfort of a marriage that had lasted over a decade. But then she noticed Mark's attention drift. Not suddenly, not obviously, but slowly enough to feel real. His eyes followed a woman walking past them, a woman Clare did not know, someone ordinary yet confident, laughing with another guest. Mark's gaze stayed on her just a moment too long, long enough for Clare's chest to tighten and her breath to pause. In that second, she felt something sharp and unfamiliar. Not anger, not jealousy exactly, but awareness. The kind that wakes you up when you realize something important has changed. Clare didn't react. Years of marriage had taught her control and grace. She smiled when someone spoke to her, nodded at the right times, kept her posture relaxed even as her thoughts raced faster than the soft music playing in the background. She told herself it was nothing. People notice others all the time. Attraction does not mean betrayal. Yet when she glanced back at Mark, she saw distance in his expression, not desire, but distraction, as if his mind had stepped away from the room and from her. That hurt more than the look itself. Clare had felt that distance growing quietly over time, hidden under routines, shared bills, polite conversations about work and weekend plans. Now it stood clearly between them, like an unspoken truth. As the night continued, she caught his attention wander again, brief, but undeniable. Each time it felt like a small thread, pulling loose from the fabric of their life together. She wondered how long it had been happening, how many moments she had missed while trusting the comfort of familiarity. When Mark finally turned back to her, and asked if she wanted another drink, his voice sounded normal, caring even, which made everything more confusing. The man she loved was still there, yet somehow not fully with her. When they left the event and walked to the car under the cool night air, Clare felt heavier than she had when the evening began. The drive home was filled with light conversation that felt careful, almost practiced, as if both of them were avoiding something fragile resting between their words. Clare watched the city lights blur past the window, remembering earlier years when silence between them felt peaceful instead of tense. When Mark used to reach for her hand without thinking, when his attention was easy and full. She wondered when that ease had faded, whether she had changed too, whether life had quietly shaped them into strangers sharing the same space. When they arrived home, Mark kissed her cheek, gentle and familiar. He went inside to check emails while Clare lingered in the car for a moment longer, breathing deeply, letting the truth settle, realizing that what hurt most was not the presence of another woman, but the absence of something she once felt certain about. As she stood alone in the quiet driveway, she understood that this moment mattered. Ignoring it would only allow the distance to grow. Though she did not yet know what she would do, she knew one thing clearly. The life she thought was steady had shifted. The next choice she made would shape what came after. Because sometimes love does not break loudly. It slips unnoticed until someone finally pays attention. Tonight, Clare had paid attention. The days after the fundraiser moved quickly, but felt heavy, as if time itself had changed its rhythm. Clare noticed it first in the quiet moments of their home. Everything looked the same yet felt different. Mark still kissed her goodbye in the mornings, still asked about her work, still laughed at familiar jokes, but his attention drifted in ways that made her feel unseen. She found herself watching him more closely, not with suspicion, but with a growing need to understand, wondering if he felt the same distance she did, or if it lived only inside her thoughts. Instead of speaking right away, she stayed silent, choosing to listen, to feel, to observe the small gaps between their words. At night, when Mark fell asleep beside her, Clare lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the image of his wandering eyes, not to punish herself, but to face a truth she had avoided. Comfort had slowly replaced connection. Routine had taken the place of passion. One evening while Mark worked late, Clare stood alone in the kitchen holding a photo from years earlier, taken during a trip along the Oregon coast. The wind had tangled her hair. Mark had laughed freely, his arm wrapped around her as if letting go were impossible. The memory filled her with warmth and grief at the same time. That version of them felt far away. She asked herself whether love faded on its own, or if people simply stopped feeding it. As the silence of the house pressed in, she felt a choice forming inside her, one that surprised her, not driven by fear or anger, but by clarity. Instead of planning a confrontation or searching for proof of betrayal, she decided to look inward, to face the parts of herself she had neglected, the dreams postponed, the confidence softened by years of putting everyone else first. The next morning, she signed up for an art class she had once talked about but never pursued. feeling a small spark of excitement that reminded her she was more than a wife waiting for attention. She began waking earlier, walking through the neighborhood as the air cooled her thoughts, feeling stronger with each step. When Mark noticed the change, the new energy in her voice, the lightness in her smile, he asked if she was happy. She answered honestly that she was trying to be. That answer stayed with him. He sensed something shifting too. A few days later, Claire asked him to join her for a walk along the waterfront. No distractions, just the two of them. When they stood by the water, watching the light reflect on the surface, Claire spoke gently, choosing truth without blame. She told him she missed feeling close, that she missed being seen, that she felt them drifting and it scared her. Mark listened quietly, surprised by her calm and honesty. After a long pause, he admitted he had felt lost in routine, distracted by work, unaware of how far they had drifted. He told her the look she noticed meant nothing on its own, but the distance between them mattered more than he wanted to admit. In that moment, something softened between them, not fixed, but open. As they walked home side by side, Claire felt a cautious hope rise, knowing that love could still grow if both were willing to tend to it. Though nothing was certain, the silence between them no longer felt empty. It felt like a space waiting to be filled. After that long walk by the waterfront, Claire felt a shift inside her, quiet determination to reclaim the part of herself she had set aside over the years. Instead of retreating or waiting for Mark to notice, she chose action, starting with herself, waking earlier each day to take long walks through the crisp morning air, feeling the rhythm of her own heartbeat and the pulse of the world around her. Noticing the small details she had ignored for too long, the sound of birdsong, the pattern of leaves in the trees, the way sunlight danced on the pavement. She enrolled in the art class she had dreamed of for years, picking up brushes and colors with a sense of freedom she hadn't felt since her 20s. Meeting new people who shared her interests, laughing at small mistakes, discovering a spark of confidence she thought was gone. As she carried this new energy into her days, Mark began to notice the difference in her. The way her shoulders lifted, her smile became lighter, her voice held warmth and certainty. It stirred something in him that had been dormant under years of routine and habit, reminding him of the woman he had fallen in love with, the one full of life and curiosity. Claire did not flaunt herself or seek attention. She simply embraced herself, letting her presence be strong and authentic, a quiet magnetism that drew him closer without force. One evening, she invited him for another walk, this time deliberately slow, winding through quiet streets and along the water where the lights reflected softly on the ripples. She spoke honestly, her words gentle but clear, telling him how she had felt the distance growing between them, how she missed feeling seen, how she longed for connection. Instead of anger, she offered understanding, admitting her own part in letting routine take over, expressing her love while opening a door for change. Mark listened first quietly, then with a voice tinged with emotion, admitting he too had been caught in the rhythm of life. Unaware of the small gaps forming between them, he explained that the moment Claire noticed at the fundraiser had been fleeting, meaningless in itself, but it had made him realize how much he had taken their closeness for granted. As they walked side by side, their hands brushing, they began to speak more openly about their desires, their fears, their dreams, the things they had stopped sharing over time. With every word, the space between them softened, filled with honesty, and the beginning of trust rebuilt. Claire noticed how Mark's eyes no longer wandered, but focused on her, seeing her fully, as if awakening to the person she had always been. The realization made her heart beat faster, not with panic, but with hope, the hope that love could be renewed when both were willing to nurture it. Over the next few weeks, she continued to live fully in her own growth, pursuing hobbies, reconnecting with friends, caring for herself while keeping their home warm and welcoming. Mark responded in kind, joining her in small adventures, showing attentiveness, planning little surprises, speaking words that carried depth and sincerity. Gradually, the tension and unspoken distance of past months began to fade, replaced by laughter, shared glances, gentle touches that reminded them both of the intimacy they had built together over years. Claire understood that the real surprise was not in changing Mark's attention, not in trying to control his feelings, but in how she had discovered her own strength. How she had chosen courage over fear, presence over resentment, love over pride. She felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that by embracing herself, she had unknowingly created space for him to return fully without drama or pressure. One night as they sat together on the porch sipping tea, she saw Mark watch her with a look that was patient, tender, and awake, a look she hadn't seen in years. She realized that this simple change, this choice to live fully as herself, while still offering love, had begun to heal the cracks, had begun to remind them both why they had chosen each other in the first place. Though the future remained unwritten, Claire felt a calm certainty that they were on the right path, building connection from honesty, courage, and presence. In that moment, As the moonlight reflected on the garden, and the soft hum of the night surrounded them, she understood that the heart of love was not in grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but in the small, consistent acts of choosing each other every day, seeing each other fully, nurturing the bond quietly, but deeply. This revelation, simple yet profound, filled her with hope and anticipation for the next chapter. As she rested her hand on Mark's, feeling him squeeze it gently in return, Clare smiled softly to herself, realizing that sometimes the most powerful surprises come not from others, but from discovering your own strength and inviting love back into your life through courage and presence. A few weeks after Clare had begun focusing on herself and reconnecting with Mark, the change in their relationship was noticeable, subtle yet powerful. One Friday afternoon, she came home to find a note resting on the kitchen table in Mark's handwriting. Simple and direct. Pack a bag. Trust me. Her heart raced with curiosity and a tinge of nervous excitement. Mark rarely planned surprises. This felt different, full of intention and care. Without asking questions, she obeyed, packing essentials and leaving the rest to the unknown. Feeling a mix of anticipation and hope, they drove north toward a quiet lakeside town in Canada, the kind of place that seemed untouched by routine, where the air was crisp, the water still. The world outside slowed down. During the drive, there was no need for small talk. They shared glances, a few smiles, a sense of presence that had been missing for months. Arriving at a small cabin tucked among pines, they were greeted by silence and space, the kind that allowed words and feelings to rise naturally. That evening they walked along the lake shore, the moon reflecting on the calm water. For hours they spoke, first cautiously, then with growing honesty, sharing thoughts and dreams they had once assumed were understood. Rediscovering the rhythm of conversation that had been drowned out by life's routine. They laughed at memories both silly and sweet, recalled moments from early in their relationship. As the stars emerged overhead, Clare felt a warmth she had not realized she missed, a mix of relief, joy, and connection that filled the quiet spaces of her heart. Mark reached for her hand, holding it gently. The gesture carried more meaning than words could express, an acknowledgement of presence, commitment, attention. Through these small acts, the distance that had grown between them began to dissolve, replaced by a growing intimacy, tender and steady, built on honesty and choice. Over the next 2 days, they hiked along wooded paths, sat by campfires sharing stories and quiet silences, cooked meals together. In every shared activity, they noticed the other not as an expectation but as a gift, listening fully, speaking fully, loving fully. Clare realized the surprise Mark had prepared was never about an elaborate trip or extravagant gesture, but about space, time, and focus on each other, about creating conditions where they could remember what had drawn them together. In those moments, she understood something profound. She had saved their relationship not by competing, questioning, or fearing, but by embracing herself, by rediscovering her passions, her strength, and her joy. In doing so, she had invited Mark to see her fully again. He had responded not with guilt or excuses, but with presence, attention, and love. As they sat one evening on the cabin porch, the lake reflecting the golden sunset, Mark turned to her with eyes clear and warm, a look that said everything words could not. Clare felt the depth of connection that had once been buried under silence and routine now blooming quietly but powerfully. She smiled softly, understanding that this moment, these days together, were a turning point, not just a pause from life, but a deliberate choice to reconnect, to prioritize love, to nurture it with care and attention. She saw in Mark the man she had married, but also someone renewed, aware of the bond they shared and committed to protecting it. In that clarity, Clare felt a sense of calm and joy she had longed for, a feeling that they were not just reclaiming what had been lost, but building something stronger, rooted in trust, honesty, mutual presence. As the stars began to scatter across the night sky, Mark held her hand tighter. Clare rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat matching hers. In that quiet, simple connection, she realized the true surprise of the story was never about jealousy or fear, but about the power of choice, the courage to grow, the beauty of rediscovering each other through patience, love, and attention. She knew that, whatever challenges came next, they had found a path back to each other, one paved with understanding, care, and the gentle certainty that love, when nurtured, could always return stronger than before.